Hello, class. This is Chapter 9 review and for you, PowerPoint presentation. I hope this helps you understand net present value since we haven't had a chance to discuss these things. In lecture, I said I would go through the PowerPoints just so you understand how to calculate these things. And I'll be flipping back and forth with the calculator so that you can actually see how to input them. So if you have your calculator and you want to work along with me, that's fine. We're going to be going through the PowerPoints and some examples so that you can see exactly how to do that. So if I can figure out and remember how to go about doing this. I did want to, let me see if I can size this up so that I can just do slideshow. Yep, from current. Yep, so let's see if I have my pencil handy. Yep, okay, and I may need to not do that yet though. Let's do this. Okay. Okay, so I certainly want to go through and start with just an overview and understand some concepts here, but I really want to get to the meat of the things that we're going to be talking about here. So specifically, there will be some things that you'll want to understand. Certainly net present value, I think, is what we're going to be talking about. How is it a decision tool for making projects or deciding on projects and investments? We're going to be talking about the payback rule, as well as the discount payback rule. And we won't really be talking about accounting rates of return and that. But we will be talking about internal rate of return and understanding what that's about, strengths and weaknesses, as well as we'll also look about calculating the modified internal rate of return. So if you have some questions along the way, then just email me and we can walk through this, okay? So moving into, the actual outline, if you wanted to, again, we're going to be looking at these sorts of things. I'm going to flip over to another pen that I thought I had set up. I think I had a highlighter there, this highlighter, this blue highlighter. So again, the payback rule, and the discounted payback, again, we won't be looking so much at the average accounting return. We will be looking at internal rate of return and just the overall practice of capital budgeting. So in any decision-making criteria, we need to have good decision criteria. And we use these tools for that benefit. So you'll learn that net present value, it all comes back to adding value to the firm. And when we're adding value, then we're going to be positively increasing shareholder value. And that's what's important for us as we choose projects to invest firms' money in, okay? So we have to look at those things that are going to be, considering those things that have an investment and how much is that, how much added value is that. So how much value is created from undertaking an investment is certainly crucial. So we certainly have to, in doing so, somehow or another, we have to estimate those expected future cash flows. And good accountants, good projections are going to make all the difference in creating and estimating those expected future cash flows. The second step is to estimate the required return. So at what level do we want to, if we're going to invest our money, what level of return do we want on our money? Okay, do we want just a 2% return? Do we want a 5% return? Or do we want something more more growth oriented, maybe 10% or even 15%? So the required return is what we expect from projects. If we're going to invest in them, that's the kind of return that we're looking for. So if they're less than our required return, we probably wouldn't be interested in investing in those. But that is the main scenario for us to consider. And then the third step is to find the present value of those cash flows. So ultimately, from that present value, we're going to subtract the initial investment. So going forward, we're going to be considering just a simple example, and this is an extremely good example for us to consider as such. You certainly want to have your calculator handy. We're going to walk through the cash flow here, but while this is on the screen, I'll just change this to a pen so that we can actually discuss, what that actually would be on your computer. Okay, so again, as a condition, you certainly want to clear your registers, and to do that, you want to, again, F clear X, G clear X. Okay, now that we have those handy, we're looking back at the problem, and we're looking at year 0. The cash flow is minus 165. Okay, and then the year 1 cash flow is actually 63,120. Okay, and the cash flow for year 2 is 70,800, okay, and year 3 is 91,080, okay. So you are reviewing this new project, and you have estimated those following cash flows, and so we're going to be looking at, does this make sense for us to invest in this project, okay. Notice the required return here of 12%, okay. So when we look at how we actually begin to calculate that, we want to know that if our decision rule, when we calculate it, we want to know that if the net present value is positive, we're going to accept the project, okay? That is our primary rule. If net present value is positive, we want to accept the project. If a positive NPV means that the project is expected to add value, as I said, to the firm, and will therefore increase the wealth of the owners. Obviously, our goal is to increase the wealth of our owners, and so NPV is a direct measure of how well this project will meet our goal. So how do we go about doing that, okay? What is that calculation? Well, you can go through this process and discount each one of those cash flows as they occur from our problem up here. These cash flows, okay, are all similar or identical to the cash flows on this slide. If you're seeing how they are discounted, obviously this is the formula that you have learned to know for discounting and solving for present value. Again, that comes from our formula for future value is equal to present value times 1 plus R to the n power. And so each one of these are discounted based on the time in which they occurred. Okay, this was the 63,120 is discounted for period 1, 70,800 is discounted for period 2, and 91,080 is discounted for period 3. Again, based on our 1 plus R to the n. And that formula comes from solving for present value. Okay, if we solve for present value, then we wind up with, the future value over 1 plus R to the n. Okay, so, but this is the preferred method I'm going to show you. Okay, it's going to be a whole lot easier for you to see and understand. And we're going to work through that input. If you remember from the presentation that we've had using the G and the CF sub J, as well as CF sub G, CF sub I, okay? We're going to be using those function keys to calculate the net present value as well as the internal rate of return. So I just wanted to walk you through the keys for this, okay? If I was going to input each of these, and in the first case, let's just say that we are, that's on number 8. So we can actually look at entering each of these into our calculator and realize that, again, when they compute, they're coming up with 12,627.41. So go ahead and let's work through this on the calculator so that you can actually see how this is. I think that that would be something that you can see rather clearly if we go back to this slide and understand how to do it. So again, this is going to be, usually you would enter 165,000. Let me back up, because you got to, if I was going to actually show you those keystrokes, remember, you actually would have 165, 165, CHS, which is going to change the sign of 165,000 to a negative 165, since that's our first entry, okay? And then you're going to mash the G, and then CF sub 0, because that's our initial investment, okay? And if you flip over, that's 165, and we look at this calculator, again, 165, change the sign, CHS, okay? And then we're going to do mash G and then CF sub 0. So we have put that cash flow in as our initial investment in the project, okay? Our next cash flow, just staying on the calculator for the time being, you can flip back if you want to, but the actual first cash flow is 63,120 G CF sub J, okay? Our cash flow number 2 is 70,800 G CF sub J, and our cash flow number 3 is 91,080 G CF sub J, and at that point we need to input 12 as our discount rate, and so 12 and then I, and then all that's left to do is to mash the F function key and the NPV key, and we wind up with 12,627.41. Okay, so it's the identical answer as what we have in our PowerPoint presentation here. Okay, so I just wanted you to be able to see how to work through an actual net present value calculation with the calculator. Okay, so sorry about that. If we continue on, okay, we want to discuss net present value and understand what does it do. Does net present value take into account, the actual time value of money? Well, certainly we can say yes, okay? It takes into account the net present value of money. Does the net present value rule account for the risk of the cash flows? Yes, okay? So does the net present value provide an indication about the increase in value? Yes, well, we solve for it. So we know if it's a positive number, it's an increase in value. And so, yes, it does give us an indication. And so should we consider the net present value rule for our primary decision rule? Most of the times, yes. Okay, that's going to be our default. We're going to come back to net present value. Ultimately, if it's positive, then it's going to add value to our firm, okay? You can go through the Excel calculation for that if you want to. I'm going to move on to payback period so that you can understand the difference in payback period. But payback period is just really a simple measure, basically deducting the cash flows from the initial investment until those have balanced out. And we're trying to determine just years or months time period. It's just a period, right? That's what we're talking about. So if we are considering, a payback period, we should just be looking for a number. That's basically years or months is our period. So going through that process, we're going to be estimating the cash flows. And let me get me another pen here that I want to use, okay? Let's do more ink colors, okay? Let's do that one. Apply, okay? So whenever we're looking at this, we're going to be estimating our cash flows, and we're going to just simply subtract those future cash flows from the initial cost until the initial investment has been recovered, okay? So our decision rule, certainly, except if the payback period is less than some preset limit. So the firm is going to say, hey, we're only going to invest in projects that offer us, we need to recover our investment within 5 years, or maybe we need to recover our investment in 3 years. Maybe it's longer, maybe it's 7 years. So the payback rule, okay, is the accept and reject is based on that payback period being met with our analysis on the project, okay? So looking at a typical payback similarly to the same numbers that we just got through looking at, if we assume we will accept the project if it pays back in 2 years, okay, 2 years, then our initial investment, if you remember, was $165,000, okay? And our first year cash flow was $63,120, so we still have to recover $101,880, okay? In the second year, because we still have $101,880 to recover, our cash flow is $70,800, and therefore we still, after that second year, we still have to recover $31,000 of our initial investment. And then for the third year, that's the year in which we actually break even. We recover the balance of what we owe, and we actually receive $60,000 at the end, by the end of the year 3. Okay, so, but the question is, do we accept or reject the project? Okay, so the way we actually calculate the payback, though, even though we recover fully in year 3, okay, we have to pay back, we have to, our decision process is based on our actual payback. And if you remember in our beginning, we said that we have to accept that the payback period is less than some preset limit, okay? And so in our preset limit, okay, we actually said that our preset limit was 2 years, okay? So as we go forward and we calculate, that actual payback method, we want to understand, well, is it, okay? Do we actually accept this project in that case? And so as we calculate that scenario,